that out. So thanks everyone for joining us this morning. This morning's session is all about GriefChat. So we actually have Catherine Betley, who's Managing Director of GriefChat, with us. And very quickly, I'm going to be quiet and totally hand you over to Catherine, who's going to talk you through her product, how you can use it as charity partners, and maybe certainly is available to answer any questions. So any questions, pop them in the chat box. There is a Q&A thing set up, but the chat box is much better because then everybody can see the questions that you're answering. So I will hand you over to Catherine.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to speak today, Sally. It's very nice to be here, Christmas jumper and all. Slight lack of caffeine going on, but other than that, I'm sure we will survive. So we've got sort of, what, half an hour, 45 minutes. Please do ask any questions as we go along. I'm more than happy to let my little festive elf watch the chat box for me. That's you, Sally. You can tell me what's happening and what questions people have got if I can't see them, because I am going to share my screen with you now, and hopefully this will work. Here we go. Ta-da! Right then, hopefully you can see that.
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Super duper duper. So what we're talking about today, we're talking about the GriefChat partnership that we have with Muchloved, and what that means as a Muchloved optimum partner, or if you're planning to become an optimum partner, or if we can tempt you into becoming an optimum partner, and actually you get GriefChat as a partner benefit as part of that. So just a little bit of background as to who we are and what we do and how we do it, and then the opportunity for people to ask anything that they would like to ask. So very long story short, we started to play around with the idea of web chat as a therapeutic tool in 2017. My background is 20 some years in counselling and psychotherapy. Most of that time has been spent with bereavement care services. I was UK Director of Services, Cruise Bereavement Care, which I'm sure many of you will have heard of. And one of the things that has become very clear to us in the last few years is the pressure really that community bereavement services are under, and the numbers, just the sheer numbers of all of us who find ourselves struggling with bereavement at some point in our lives. So really that's where GriefChat came from, that kind of desire to bring a service to the market that was pretty light touch. It wasn't professional counselling as such, because we don't believe everybody needs or wants professional counselling, but it's the opportunity to really speak to a professional counsellor, so you can just tell your story, offload some of that anxiety, maybe get a few hints and tips, and maybe be signposted to those services that could help you in the longer term. So that's kind of where the desire came from, and obviously the knowledge as well that services were really under pressure, and there were a lot of waiting lists around, so we wanted to do something about that. So if you look at this kind of scale of problem, if you extrapolate it just in the UK, and GriefChat at the moment is available anywhere in the world. There are caveats to that. So if you can type in English, and if you're happy to work on a 9 AM till 9 PM timescale in the UK, then you're more than welcome to use a service from anywhere in the world. But if you look at the problem in the UK, so 3 million people also have lost someone that they've loved in the last 12 months. And when grief has no time limit, which is something we're very keen to let people know, because people often say to us, how long will this last for? People are tired of me telling this story. How long will I feel this way? But actually, once you're bereaved for life. This is not something that will leave and go off and take care of itself in that sense. If you've had a significant loss, or you've lost somebody who was really important in your life, that's going to stay with you forever. That's not to say that the pain of that initially, it changes over time. And for most people, it reduces over time as well. But there is no time scale to that. And oftentimes we talk to people who've been bereaved many years ago, for whom a more recent loss has triggered some of those thoughts and feelings again. So you've got an awful lot of bereaved people out there, sort of labouring that point. And our vision really is that every bereaved person, and I think really if you look around your friends and your family group, there aren't many people who aren't bereaved really over the course of a lifetime. It comes to us all. So that any bereaved person anywhere in the world can access that timely professional bereavement care when they want it. Because what's also really important to us at GriefChat is when I find the courage to ask for help, that's when I need it. I don't particularly want to have to play phone tag. I don't want to have to sit on a waiting list for a long time. I don't want to have to wait weeks or months to join a group. Actually, when I've decided that actually I need some support, that's when I'm looking for it, and that's when I deserve to be given it, really. And that's quite important to us as well, that timely aspect. And again, if you extrapolate it, lots and lots and lots of 60 million people die every year, depending on who you believe in terms of the numbers of bereaved people per death. You know, if you, certainly when I was at Cruise, we would say that for every death, maybe 3 people are significantly bereaved. If you talk to Irish Hospice Foundation, they would say 7, but you know, they have bigger families in Ireland as a stereotype. And if you talk to suicide bereavement people, they would say actually the ripples after a suicide loss are far greater. So there are lots of people touched by every death. So we've got an enormous number of bereaved people in the year, in every year, to support, and all of the people that were bereaved in prior years as well. We don't think that everybody needs professional bereavement care, but we do think that most people need somewhere to share their story, whether that's friends or family or community, and maybe a little bit of extra information. And the NICE guidance suggests that 15 to 20% of people might need some specialist bereavement support. And we all know people in our professional lives and our personal lives who, even after a long time, really struggle with their loss, and it affects all aspects of their lives. And they're the people really that we know really would benefit from more bereavement support than they can probably get hold of. And then again, you look at the prevalence of things like complicated grief. We are very anti, or I am very anti, I should say. I can't really speak for everybody in GriefChat, but I am very anti the medicalisation of grief. And what we're seeing at the minute is a move towards medicalising and adding grief or complicated grief into sort of psychiatric manuals and so on. So what we see at the minute is the idea that grief is a problem that can be fixed either by drugs or by medication, or sometimes by talking therapies. For most people, it's not about fixing the loss, because we can't give people that. Actually, but there are people who really do struggle with loss. And although we would always say that grief is not an illness, grief can certainly lead to people becoming ill if they don't get the support that they need. We know that the bereavement support services primarily delivered in the community, delivered extremely well by tens of thousands of volunteers in some cases, in some organisations, but still capacity is really challenged. The funding market for services is squashed and squeezed like everything else at the moment. And we often talk to people who've been on waiting lists for a long period of time. And actually that's something else that GriefChat can help with, is that interim care of people who are waiting maybe to join a group or see a counsellor or see a psychiatrist or whatever it might be. And certainly access to short-term counselling, like a lot of things in the NHS at the minute, is really problematic. And we're seeing people waiting for 12 months at the moment for access to CBT and various other types of psychotherapeutic help. So what we know is that grief impacts every area of our lives, but specifically what we hear from people a lot on GriefChat is, I can't be the parent that I want to be to my children. I've had a significant loss, a partner or a parent or a sibling or a friend or whoever it is, and that is inhibiting my ability to care for my family, or it's inhibiting my ability to be the partner that I want to be, or to really engage with my work, or haven't got the attention span or the concentration that I need to have. We see that unsupported grief impacts on every area of life, most notably people's ability to concentrate, their ability to socialise, their ability to sleep, their ability to take basic care of themselves in the very early stages of grief. Particularly, people forget it goes straight out of the window, those basic bits of self-care of sleeping and resting and getting some exercise and being kind and gentle to yourself. And what we often see a lot of the time with the people who use our service, it's the copers who are often hardest hit. It's those people who have cared for everybody else, the people who look after everybody else in the family. And then we say to them, who's looking after you? And quite often they'll say, that's kind of my job. And very often it's these people who go unseen and sometimes don't get offered the kinds of support that maybe some other people in the family might do. But it impacts enormously on health outcomes and mental health outcomes and our ability to engage in the workplace and be the people that we want to be. which is why bereavement support is really important to a lot of people. So what do we actually offer? You can see all the notes on my screen here. Essentially, we decided to use online chat. And some of you may have already heard the story because I do labour it a little bit, but I was sat on a beach, minding my own business, trying to read my book, and the middle teenage daughter was sending me instant message after instant message via Messenger, as it happened, to get an answer. Could she go out that night, or something equally significant, no doubt. And it literally came to me the idea that we can connect people really quickly. If you want an answer quickly, then instant messaging is a good way of doing that. So it seems pretty obvious that we could connect professional bereavement counsellors with grieving people really, really quickly using some kind of instant messaging. And the platform that we landed on was web chat. It was starting to be used quite heavily in retail and customer services, but not so much in therapy. So we decided to see if we could use online chats as a therapeutic tool, and so far that's gone fairly well. So we provide that free at the point of need to bereave people, very instant, very accessible. It can be accessed on a mobile phone, on a laptop, on a tablet, on a desktop. Anywhere you've got an internet connection and a browser, you can access GriefChat. So it is that online chat. We don't use bots, we don't use automated messages. The only automated messages that we use are after 30 seconds, the chatbot pops up and says, hello, I'm a counsellor, would you like to talk to me? That's the only thing that's automated. Or if for some reason or other there is a wait time, which there almost never is, it will say a bereavement counsellor is on their way. But they are the only automated messages that we use on GriefChat. Everything else is a person. And that's one of the first questions people ask us all the time. Are you a real person? And we have a range of witty and not so witty answers to that question. Normally, yes, I am. I'm a bereavement counsellor. And everybody who works in our service is qualified, all long-standing, all with a particular interest in bereavement, all supervised, all undergoing CPD or DBS checked, and all looked after by a really experienced staff team. So we offer that instant online chat. Most people find that up to an hour of chat is enough for both the counsellor and the bereaved person, and that gives people the opportunity to sort of explore what's happening for them, to really sort of, what we do find with web chat is something called the disinhibition effect on the internet, whereas actually when you pick up a helpline or you meet somebody in person, there is some preamble. You kind of introduce yourself, you warm up to the conversation, and you introduce quite slowly the topic that you really want to talk about. Not so with web chat. People come straight on and go, I have lost my ex and I feel why. It's very, very quick in that sense. So you do tend to get a full hour if you want that time of exploring what's happened and how people are feeling about it and how they're coping and all that sort of stuff. And we give people advice sometimes. Although as counsellors, we do stay away a little bit from advice, but sometimes people really do need the, are you taking good care of yourself? Have you thought about talking to your GP? Who else is around you for support? Just a little bit of advice there. That reassurance. You know, if I had £1 for every bereaved person who'd ever asked us, am I going mad? Am I doing this right? Or I'm not doing this right. I don't feel like I'm doing this right. Then I probably wouldn't need to be sitting here in front of you now. But that reassurance that there is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is only your way. And your way might look very different to other people around you. Sometimes that gives rise to conflict. So helping people understand what bereavement is, what grief is, what grief looks and feels like, and actually how we can best navigate our way through that. We give a lot of information about the nature of grief, about the nature of different types of bereavement, sudden unexpected loss, baby loss, loss of a long-time partner or an older person, loss of a parent, all kinds of different losses. Pet loss, we get quite a few people talking about pet loss in our service as well, and how that impacts on individuals and families. We do quite a lot of signposting. I suspect we have the biggest directory of bereavement services in the UK. And I can say that with some confidence because I helped to write it back in 2007 and have done a little bit of work in the meantime, trying to keep it up to date and keep it going. So we have an enormous directory of bereavement services, some stalwarts who we refer people to all the time, and some more niche providers really. And we try and keep that as up to date as possible so people we know we're not sending people into a blank wall. So we tend to send people all over. In fact, I was watching last night, we tend to send people to all kinds of health services, depending on their bereavement. A lot of people, so things like tinnitus. I was watching a chat last night that the person in question was saying that their grief had really aggravated their tinnitus, and actually until that got sorted out, they couldn't even think about the grief. So actually signposted people to services that might be able to help them with that kind of thing. And we also offer access to longer term counselling as well. We know a lot of our partners offer this. We tend to try to keep abreast of what's being offered and where and what the waiting list might be and what people can expect, so we can manage people's expectations. But actually some people will come onto our system and say, I don't want to wait, I can pay for counselling, where do I get it? Because actually getting reliable information about a local counsellor or a service is also pretty tricky, because people don't know what they're looking for. There's a lot out there, there's an awful lot of counselling directories out there as well, so we can tend to point them to people that we have vetted and that we know are trustworthy and professional as well. So we can point people into private professional counselling as well. One of the things we also know about GriefChat is that we have a far higher number of men using that service than we do with any of the other helplines that I've been involved with for most of my career. We don't know exactly, because GriefChat is anonymous, but from the contents of chats and from the names that people give us and from what they tell us, we can tell that actually we probably have a 35 to 40% usage by men, which in a counselling service is pretty unusual. And obviously we're always concerned, because we know that the highest rate of suicide is among men of a relatively young age. And actually getting men to talk about the impact of loss, to talk about how they're feeling about things, and to actually take a look at where they're going to get some support, we hope will have a positive impact on men's mental health. We also know that one of the greatest preventative measures you can take to reduce suicide rates is to support people bereaved by suicide. And we do an awful lot of that work on GriefChat as well, specifically for some organisations who work with suicide loss, but also because a lot of people who come on GriefChat want to explore and they do articulate thoughts of wanting to be with the person who's died, not necessarily wanting to take their own lives, but we're not afraid to get in and have that conversation which says, are you thinking of harming yourself? This is how to keep yourself safe. This is how you reach out. We work in quite similar ways as Samaritans, because we have limited information about our chatters, so we can't always jump in with both feet and kind of refer them to whoever and get them picked up or whatever. But we do explore quite extensively with people in a safe way what is going on with that, and how far plans might be in place and where the right support is for that person at that time. So hopefully we're doing our little bit to support people both bereaved by suicide and to help prevent further suicide. Now everything's frozen. So we've been around since 2017. I literally called up a buddy of mine who used to work for me at Cruise and said she was head of Helplines Association Services, I think it's Helplines Partnership these days, and said, Sarah, is anybody using web chat as a therapeutic tool? And she said, nope, but it sounds like fun. So she came along in 2017, helped us to find, we tested a few different systems, found one that we liked, began to invite some of our bereavement counsellors who worked for my other business to train, because one of the biggest things we've had to learn is how to translate tone of voice to text. That's a completely different skill to regular counselling. So we've had to kind of recruit and train people to do that. And we piloted the service in 2018, where we had a very small number of chats and got phenomenally excited when anyone came through. In fact, I remember I think it was 2018 Christmas, we were in the office and we had 3 chats on at the same time. And literally we were cracking out the champagne, we were so excited. And now we've almost never got less than 10 chats on at any given moment of the day. So it's a bit of a difference now. Picked up the pace a little bit in 2019, started to go out and invite partners to work with us. And then of course the pandemic happened, which then really changed the landscape for bereavement services in the UK and in the rest of the world in many ways, because most face-to-face services had to stop operating, all groups in the community, all counselling, kind of, if it didn't move online, and that took a little while for a lot of places in 2020, it kind of stopped. So actually we really picked up the pace. We were well placed to do more online work because we have a dispersed workforce and we offer services online. So that was cool. And it's just gone up and up and up. Essentially, we keep turning over more chats every year as we take on new partner organisations, and people get used to working in this way. So I think, again, it's a bit out of date. We've done well over 100,000 chats, and we get really lovely feedback from people saying, I'm so glad you were there when I needed you to. This was really helpful. I didn't expect it to be as helpful as it was, because I don't think everybody's used to using a therapeutic tool on the web very often. To organisations coming to say, you're helping us really to provide a better level of care for our bereaved customers. So that's all pretty satisfactory. So for you guys, what do you get? As part of your Much Loved Optimum subscription, you have the opportunity to integrate GriefChat into your website. We suggest that you would put it on a bereavement page or an aftercare page or an in-memory fundraising page, or wherever bereaved people will look on your website. Not necessarily right across your website unless you happen to be a bereavement organisation and you want people to use it all the time, but actually somewhere specific where you think that you can either drive bereaved people to that place on your website, or that bereaved people go organically because it's somewhere that funeral donations might be collected, or they can set up a tribute page, or actually look for some information, advice, support about grief and loss. And it sits on your website. We don't ask you to send people to us. In fact, at the end of the year, you will no longer be able to send people to us because we are taking GriefChat off our website. We've always had it on the GriefChat website as a kind of a free pop-up for anyone to use, but I think we've proved the concept now, and actually nobody pays GriefChat to provide this service for GriefChat. So actually it's going to be a service you can only get through our partner organisations, so either on your own website or send them to another GriefChat partner. So that's a plan for the end of this year. It hopefully improves your bereavement care signposting capacity. So if you have a helpline or you're talking to bereaved fundraisers or whatever it might be, you can say, do you know what? We've got a bereavement counsellor on our website. They're there 9 till 9, Monday to Friday. Why don't you go have a chat with them and see if that helps? And hopefully that helps improve the confidence of staff and volunteers as well, because you have a professional bereavement counsellor literally sitting on your website, not literally, but figuratively sitting on your website. We say it's good for brand empathy. It's a little bit of a corporate term really, but in that sense, making sure that whatever service your charity gives to people, and it may or may not be anything about bereavement, we partner with all kinds of charities, but a lot of charities are in the tribute and in memory space these days, particularly on fundraising, and actually finding ways of supporting those fundraisers, or finding ways of supporting people who've used your service. Maybe it's a healthcare charity, or maybe it is an end-of-life care charity, whatever it might be. Or grief is a thing that touches a lot of people. So actually extending your brand empathy and making sure that your supported journeys go right the way through to being, when they've been bereaved, and it's really a good way of taking care of people. And sometimes people come to your charity or organisation and they have practical things to do, and when they've got practical things to do, they also share their emotional state with you, and so actually splitting off the emotional needs from practicality of, even if it's running a marathon or organising a fundraising event or whatever it might be, actually somewhere to send people if those emotions are too difficult to deal with. It's a nice safe pair of hands for you all. We have virtually no wait time. It takes about 10-15 seconds to connect someone to a bereavement counsellor. There is no leaving messages unless you call us out of hours, unless you leave a message out of hours, and we will get back to you the next day. But there is no wait time for GriefChat. That was really part of it. There's no pre-chat forms. We don't ask anybody to give us any identifying information at all, and that was really important to remove all of those barriers. So you don't have to pick up the phone and give people your life history and your doctor's address and all the rest of it. You don't have to give us anything apart from what you want to tell us at that time. And it provides quite appropriate support at a time of very complex emotional need. And I say appropriate support because The reason we use bereavement counsellors is mainly for my peace of mind, because then I know that people are bereavement specialists, they've got all the counselling skills that we need, and they can hold what people give them in an appropriate manner and seek supervision support if they need it. So that's kind of part and parcel of how we work. It's not that we are counselling people on web chat particularly. In fact, we call it counselling light. It's a listening service, and we give people a lot of diverse range of support at a time where we get people from before the death who want to talk about somebody who's coming to the end of life. We get people themselves who are coming to the end of their lives who want to talk about the impact of that on themselves and their families. We get people who lost somebody. We had someone last night when I was supervising 30 years ago who then say, you know, I'm beginning, there are no organisations that want to work with me because my loss was so long ago, but this is really impacting on my life now. What can I do with it? So it can be really complex. So we sit on your website and we can be branded as GriefChat, or we can be co-branded, or we can be branded completely to your organisation. In that sense, we don't really have an ego because as long as people understand that it's a free web chat with a bereavement counsellor, that's pretty much all we ask. So you can white label the service if you want to, and many of our partners do. We've around 125, I think, actually, active partners at the minute. Some of them I will very quickly show you, but a real diverse range of organisations, right through from charities to funeral directors to financial services to coffee makers to all kinds of different places. We win some nice little awards. So we won the Best Bereavement Awareness Award at the Association of Green Funeral Directors, Good Funeral, which is essentially it's the funeral service gongs, the Oscars of the funeral world. So that was lovely this year. In fact, I think we're taking over from Much Loved because Much Loved used to win it all the time. I don't think we've been giving Much Love a run for their money the last couple of years. GriefChat is free of charge for charities with an optimum partnership with Much Loved. And you get 500 chats a year included in that, which for pretty much all but the largest charities, or if you're a bereavement specific charity and you know that all of your clients are going to be on your website looking for help, it's usually plenty. People always get really hung up on have they got enough chats. But if you've got quite a few chats coming through, we report to you every month. We will keep you up to date with where you're at. And usually 500 chats is more than enough for your average charity. And there are two ways. And if you go over your chats, we can charge you a per chat fee. Actually, there's three ways. You can turn it off. That's fine. It won't cost you anything at that point. You can be charged a very heavily discounted per chat fee from what we would normally charge our customers. Or if you want the kind of comfort, and we can see over the course of a year how many chats a month you're likely to have. If it's an extra 50 chats a month, then you might pay an extra £100, whatever it will be. So you can fix a small subscription fee, so there are no surprises. But you can, we tend to tell people is sort of suck it and see how it goes for the first year or two, and then we'll know really what level of usage you're likely to have. GriefChat sits best on a bereavement support page or an About Grief web page or an In Memory web page or whatever that might be, but you can put it on as many pages as you want to. And if you want to look at some examples, I'm going to show you a couple now, but you can also go to our website and have a look at our charity pages there. And the other question we are asked a lot is, how much will it cost us to install it? Or we need to get a web guy to do it, or a website company. And I normally say, as far as I am aware, it is rare, if ever, that organisations are charged to install GriefChat. It's a little bit of HTML code. It's a copy and paste job. It takes 10 minutes. If you want to create a new web page, that's a slightly different issue. But actually, the installation of GriefChat takes about 10 minutes, and your average web designer can do it in their sleep and probably shouldn't charge you anything for it. So a couple of examples. We work with a real diverse range of charities. This is MenCap, because we know that many people with intellectual disabilities really struggle to for people to explain what death is and what bereavement is and what grief is, struggle with behaviours and actually handling the fact of the death and the impact of the emotional fallout of grief. So we work with people like MenCap, which is really great. And they have an easy read guide to GriefChat on their website. So we're pretty competent and confident in working with people with learning disabilities. and supporting them through grief, and the people who care for them as well. We get a lot of people through that service. GriefChat, my alma mater, if you like. So we've worked with Cruise for the last couple of years, since the start of the pandemic. GriefChat is fully branded. You probably won't spot it's us. And that's true of quite a few of our large partners. But if you go across the Cruise website, I think it's safe to say we are their biggest service, if you like, their busiest service at the moment, just because the demand for the numbers of people coming through that are really, really high. And it's all branded up to Cruise. So you can make it look and feel like your own organisation, and that's perfectly okay with us. You will see us actually imminently on, there's an app called GriefWorks that has been developed by a lady called Julia Samuel, who's quite an eminent psychotherapist in the bereavement field. And we're starting to integrate into apps now. So that's the next big one that will be completely branded to GriefWorks as well. You'll see us places like Independent Age, yeah, so quite a lot of the bigger name charities, but lots and lots of really small charities as well. And essentially what we ask you to say on your website is that it's a free of charge chat directly with a bereavement counsellor. We're on 9 to 9, Monday to Friday. That's all we really needed to tell people, but you can obviously go to town with making a bereavement page and telling people lots of different things, as long as you tell them that. And that's obviously, that's a GriefChat branded box. And some organisations like to co-brand, so it likes to look like them. So maybe two logos or different colourways, or we can play around quite a bit. And just a final one, Northwest Cancer Research, which is a charity fairly close to my heart and very local to me as well. And don't necessarily have a kind of a forward-facing service to offer people because they're a research charity. But what they do have is a lot of people who want to fundraise and want to donate because they've lost somebody to cancer. And as a result of that, they have a lot of great people on their website, and they've added us as well. What else can we give you? Support and training to introduce the GriefChat service, to tell people about it, or even just to tell the staff what it is and how it works and how to send people there. We also do an awful lot of training. Some of you will have seen through Much Loved. We do fairly regular bereavement trainings, communicating with bereaved people, all that kind of thing as well. We do lots and lots of training, any issue around bereavement really. We have some information literature, very limited from us because our information literature tends to say GriefChat on it on our website, and we're trying to wind that down. So what we're doing more is helping you to develop your own web pages or your own information about the service. We have 200 and some professional bereavement counsellors that work for, across GriefChat, and there are other business professional help. So we have quite a big team and a very well-established team. That team's been established for about 8 years now. So we know them well, and they can work in the community or face-to-face or over the phone or webcam. So access to a lot of professional counsellors if you want to send bereaved people to those. And we give you sort of management information. It's fairly light touch unless you're a huge partner, but obviously we'll give you the number of chats. If you want to dig down into that and there are sufficient numbers of them, we can tell you the broad themes, who died, when they died, that kind of thing, if you're interested in the trends. You can co-brand it, you can white label it. And the other thing that you can do now as well is plug in our counselling booking system to your website. So if you feel that you want to offer that service to bereaved people where they can go online and book their own counselling, then you can offer the professional about counselling booking system and put that into your website if that's appropriate for your organisation. And that tends to be more on the funeral director's side of things because they don't know where to send people. So we've started doing that really for them. And at that point, I'm going to let the Christmas elf look at the chat box.
Yeah,
and do my best to answer any questions. So I'll stop the share. Hang on a minute.
So there are a couple of questions, Catherine. There's one on the Q&A, which, there's a couple on the Q&A actually. So in regards to children's charities, how can this be utilised effectively?
And that's a good question. We haven't targeted GriefChat towards children and young people. It is targeted to people over the age of 18. That said, we get lots of children and young people who use our service because children and young people are pretty tech savvy and they can find support and they're very good at it for the most part. We never send away anybody, even when they've identified themselves as a child or a young person. We do tend to steward them to different organisations. We also steward a lot to Grief Encounter, who've got a live web chat for children and young people. Although I think it's under a little strain, it tends to be a pretty busy service. So we would always talk to a child about who's around and how they're being supported and all that kind of stuff, and signpost them to appropriate services that will work with children and young people. But what we tend to say with regard to children's charities is the best support a bereaved child can have is their surviving family. So actually by supporting bereaved adults, and we give them lots of resources for children and young people, lots of books, lots of ideas, lots of links to children's charities, and who's got capacity and who, geography and all that kind of thing. So in that sense, for children's charities, it's not for children specifically. We know we get children and young people on there. There's not a right lot we can do about it. But essentially we work usually much shorter chats with children and young people, because they'll say, I'm at school or blah, blah, blah. And it becomes obvious quite quickly that they're a child or a young person, at which point we'll say, have you heard of Grief Encounter? They've got a lovely web chat. Or have you heard of this organisation? They can help you out with that, and tend to steward children away from that one. Excellent.
There's a couple on the chat. What's the out of hours email? So do people get if they put something out of hours, do they get an automated response?
Yeah, and you can choose. It depends again how big your particular grief chat service is. So with some of our big white label partners, they have out of hours. Some of them turn it off because actually they get so many out of hours messages that it becomes a bit of a pain, to be honest. But generally speaking, what happens is there is the chat box stays on the website, but you have to proactively click it out of hours, and you fill in your name and your email address and whatever it is you want to tell us. And then when the team come in at 9 o'clock in the morning, we usually have 1 or 2 counsellors who work through all of those messages and say, very simply, normally, we're very sorry we missed you. We're online now until 9 p.m. tonight. If you'd like to come chat to us, please come do it now, or come do it over the next couple of days. So it tends to be more of a, we're sorry we missed you, but we're open now kind of response.
Perfect. Eleanor from Macmillan has asked, what happens when you run out of the 500 chats? And somebody else has very kindly answered the question. So you can turn it off. You can pay for an extra chat, which I think was $3.50, wasn't it? Or actually, if you want to negotiate a higher subscription amount, then you can do that directly with Catherine.
Yeah, we're kind of not nickel and diming type people. So if you go over chats by 10 or 20, we don't really mind, it's fine. We're not going to worry too much about that. If you've got to go over it by 200 or 300, then some charities prefer to pay, we'll just pay it per chat, and we'll not promote it quite as heavily or whatever it might be, and we'll pay a couple of £100 for the extra chats that we use. Some organisations who are using tens of hundreds, thousands of chats extra say, do you know what, we'll just take out a subscription, so then we can have the full reporting, full white labeling, blah, blah, blah. So it depends on the size of the charity. With most of our little charities and medium-sized charities and non-bereavement specific charities, 500 chats is plenty.
Yeah, excellent. May not be for Macmillan.
Well, that might be slightly different.
Yeah.
That one.
Alan has asked, we kind of moved all my questions out of the way. Alan's asked, you have access to GriefChat at no extra charge if you're an optimum much loved partner. If you're an advantage partner, it's not part of the package, but there's always the opportunity to upgrade, or if you don't want to upgrade, then you can take out a subscription directly with GriefChat if you would like to.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of what the value of that is, we would normally charge a small charity for this kind of arrangement about £100 a month plus VAT. We tend to keep it as reasonable as possible, depends on the number of chats you're using, but if it's a £500 500 chats a year agreement and you're a small to medium-sized charity, we tend to charge about £100 a month. So you're getting that as part of your optimum partnership.
So worth upgrading to optimum.
I think so. I think that's a blooming good deal.
Exactly.
I would, because I love much love.
So Catherine Woodhead has asked, is it possible to provide information stroke training on rare conditions, but she's added to that. You can probably see in the chat box, our community don't want to explain the condition to counsellors when managing their journey from diagnosis to loss.
I can't see that chat, but
it's in the Q A.
Right, I'm looking in the wrong place, that's why then. Our community don't want to explain things to counsellors. Yes, so what we tend to do, we've got quite a lot of health charities, PSPA Association springs to mind because they specifically did some training for us. Quite a lot of our charities actually make we do routine training through the year with our counsellors. When we bring on a new partner that's a health specific condition that maybe we don't know very much about, we would normally ask you to either make a sort of 15-minute video explaining the condition or send over some web links. The counsellors are brilliant because one of the virtues of counsellors is they're extremely nosy and they want to learn about what they're talking about. So actually we tend, when we bring on a new partner, you know, we tend to give them links. They will go and have a look at your website and find out what services that you use. And sometimes we have you in for a live webinar briefing. If it's a big enough partnership, then we would ask you to come in and actually hold a webinar with the counselling team, or at least record a video for us so we can learn a little bit more about what your organisation does, what the health condition is, what the specific characteristics of that kind of grief and loss might be. Yeah.
Sands have asked if to have their logo, is there an additional charge to have a bespoke pop-up?
There is, and if that's a really, we do lots and lots of work with Sands already. They're a fantastic organisation, and yes, so there is a small charge, and it will depend on the numbers of chats that you're using. So in that sense, I know that Sands defo go over their 500 chats a year, and we need to talk about how maybe we manage that. At the minute, it's on a per chat basis, which I think works fine. But if you want to brand it up as well, we would probably be looking at a sort of a smallish subscription charge for that. So yeah, we can talk about that offline with you. Okay, excellent. Somebody else asked, how do you find out if your organisation is an optimum partner? Just get in touch with Much Loved, and hopefully you've got a account manager, but if not, just email support@muchloved.com and we'll get back to you. Joe, yes, you're right. If you're an optimum partner, you can get 500 chats per year through GriefChat. Just get in touch with us and we'll put you in touch with Catherine. She'll need to issue a contract to you before she can give you the widget coding. That just to say that people sometimes ask, why do we need a partnership agreement with you as well as Much Loved? It's mainly to do with data protection and the use of your logo, and obviously we're talking to your customers. So there is a partnership agreement. It's fairly simple and straightforward, but it just lays out the responsibilities. So we do ask for a partnership agreement before we release our magic code to anyone. So, and we would send that over pretty quick.
Is there a way that we can find information about how many people use GriefChat on your website, on their website?
Yes, essentially we will be able to give you a report either monthly or quarterly. You may or may not want or need one depending on how many chats you get, but most people do at least want an annual one just to see what's been happening. Some organisations actually integrate it as part of their service offering, so it's really important, and they want those monthly statistics and they want to talk about trends and who's coming and who's died and all that kind of stuff. A lot of our organisations just go, do you know what, this is a lovely value add to what we already offer, crack on and get on with it, and we have relatively limited contact, but yeah, it depends on what you need to know, but we can certainly track and give you information.
Jacqueline's asked if you would mind speaking to her wider team because she thinks it's a great idea, but
more than happy to speak to anyone who I can.
Perfect.
You on all the time.
Okay, I've jumped all over the place. I just want to make sure that answered. Yes, we'll make sure that a recording is available, and I'm sure Catherine will be happy to share her slides. So I think that's everything answered. So thanks very much everyone for joining us this morning. If you want to know anything about Much Loved, just GriefChat rather, just get in touch with your account manager or email support@muchloved.com, and we'll put you in the right direction. Yeah, just get in touch if you need any more information.
And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for joining us and looking so festive. And
Ta-da!
I think I did a poor job of being your elf.
I'm doing the Christmas thing
Could
now.
have given me the heads up, I think.
Well, have a lovely Christmas, everybody, and thank you for all that amazing work you do with whoever you do it for.